Welcome to Wired Differently. This setup is a little weird because we're in transition. We're in the middle of moving houses. Right now, I'm staying with my in laws. So, this is the format you're getting right now. Over the coming weeks, it'll be a little more structured, a little more polished, yada, yada, yada. Let's get started. This is a new thing I'm going to start doing once a week called Wired Differently, where I'm going to kind of info dump about different things about being just different, just being a misfit, ways being disabled or neurospicy affects your parenting, affects your jobs, affects your day-to-day living, affects so many different things. And today, this week, we're going to be talking about parenting while disabled because that's obviously very different from parenting when you're not disabled. Parenting is hard, period. It doesn't matter who your kids are. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're working. It doesn't matter if you're staying home. It doesn't matter if you're disabled. It doesn't matter if you're able-bodied. It doesn't matter if you're neurospicy or neurotypical. Literally none of it matters. It's hard. Parenting's hard, period. I'm going to get that out of the way right from the get-go. It's hard. I'm not saying that it's not hard. But parenting while disabled is like a whole different level. It's just a very different experience. As somebody who was able-bodied, I was disabled in the sense of that I'm autistic and I have ADHD, but as far as physical capabilities, I was perfectly able-bodied, and now I'm disabled, and holy cow, folks, it's a whole different ballgame. So today, basically, we're going to talk about what it's like to raise kids in a world that doesn't think you can raise kids. Because that's one of the biggest hurdles disabled parents have to overcome, is just the constant judgment. Judgment, if you are judging someone, that means you're not supporting someone. So if someone is receiving judgment, that means they are not receiving support from those people that are judging. Like, the two cannot coexist. And a parent that is not supported, no matter what your neurotype, no matter what your abilities, a parent that's not supported is a parent that is really struggling, and it's going to be felt by their children. It's going to affect their children for their entire lives. Parents that are consistently stressed out and don't have good coping skills and don't have good support systems create anxious, fearful, dysregulated children, which turn into anxious, dysregulated adults. And it just is a cycle that perpetuates. So, hopefully, if you are a disabled parent, you feel validated through this video. If you are not a disabled parent, hopefully this enlightens you a little bit and you can better provide support to disabled parents. First, let's start with some common misconceptions. One common misconception is that disabled people just can't take care of kids. They just can't do it. I am guilty of this misconception. When I first found out that I had POTS, I was like, how can I raise my kids? Like, I immediately thought, this means I'm not capable of raising my children. I immediately jumped to judgments about myself, even though I was struggling with it for like a good solid year before I even got my diagnosis. So like, I had been parenting them. I had been doing it. And yet I immediately thought, I can't parent anymore. Like, what am I going to do? I have to hire somebody to help me with my kids. I can't afford that. So bottom line is no. Disabled people can still take care of children, can still raise children. It just looks different. It's just going to look different. And it can look like many different things. For example, some days my POTS is so bad I can't even get out of bed. So one thing is, frequently on those days when it's that bad, we'll hang out in my bed and we'll have a movie day. It's not hard. We'll just have a movie day. We'll all cuddle up in bed and we'll have a movie day. And my kids are there, visible. I'm seeing them. They're safe. And I'll pick movies and do things where we can have conversations about like how characters could have handled things differently, about what kind of choices characters made, about, hey, this character looks sad, this one looks mad. Like, how do you think this person's feeling right now? How do you think this person could have responded better? Like, we can have conversations where I'm still actively parenting them. I'm still actively teaching them about the world. I'm teaching them how to be good humans, and I'm doing it from my bed because I am just going to be horizontal that day. I cannot be vertical. Those days aren't every single day. I don't have bedbound days every single day. Sometimes I'm not bedbound, but I'm couchbound. And that even looks a little bit more different. I just keep them in the living room with me, or in the kitchen living area where I can see them. Another thing is, if it's time to eat and they need to go in the kitchen for whatever reason, I have cameras around my house so I can still have eyes on my children even when I can't physically get up. Like, it's... A lot of people might think that's crazy, and those people just don't have experience parenting from the couch. Like, it is what it is. The days look different. And that's okay. They're not worse or better, they're just different, and that's okay. A second misconception about disabled parenting is that disabled parents are a burden to their children. And let's be real, all parents are a burden to their children in some way, shape, or form. We're all flawed humans. Like, nobody's a perfect parent. And while helping care for a disabled parent might seem like a burden, all children have burdens in some way, shape, or form. Like, all humans have burdens in some way, shape, or form. And while their mom might not be able to get up and do some of the things that other moms can do, they don't have a mom who emotionally manipulates them. They don't have a mom who tries to live through them. They have the opportunity to learn resilience and empathy in ways that other children don't. Like, nothing's perfect, and everybody has their own burdens. Everybody has their own hard. This is just the flavor of hard that my family was dealt. And it doesn't mean that their childhood is any less than anybody else's childhood. And in fact, I think that it better prepares them for the future because they have experiences that other children have not had. Quite frankly, I choose to look on the bright side, because if I beat myself up every time my kid is deprived of something because of my disability, I would spiral into a deep, dark place and just want to kill myself, honestly. If we're being real, that's how I would feel. That's what would happen. I have to choose to focus on the good. Another misconception about being a parent who is disabled is that CPS is just going to take your kids. And CPS is not automatically going to take your kids just because you're disabled. However, I will say the CPS investigations probably happen more often to disabled parents than non-disabled parents because of prejudices that many people have, which is part of the reason why I'm making this video. I'm going to give you a quick example. The very first provider that I went to when I was being assessed for autism, straight up told me I had every trait of autism. And it was clearly affecting my life. But she said the fact that you're able to take care of your children and the fact that you were able to help take care of your younger siblings tells me that you're not autistic, because autistic people are not able to take care of other people. They're just not capable of it. They're not capable of having empathy, and they're not capable of nurturing others. That scared the crap out of me. And when I got a second opinion, I made sure she was not involved at all, because that made me think, so what if I was diagnosed as autistic? What if somebody came to you who'd already been diagnosed as autistic and you found out they had children? Would you automatically be reporting them because you believe autistic people cannot take care of other people? That's just an example of prejudices that are out there, that exist, that are a threat to disabled parents. But that's obviously, there's no foundation in fact there. We know that there are hyper empathetic autistic people, as well as autistic people who have that really struggle with empathy. It's a spectrum. And that's true of so many things. I would have what's considered probably a mild to moderate severity of POTS. There are people that faint multiple times a day and have a hard time even getting out of bed. Those people would definitely struggle more with parenting their children and would definitely have to be much more creative or have assistance. That doesn't necessarily mean that their children need to be completely taken away from them. You know, there's another parent involved a lot of the time. There's public school. You know, my kids are homeschooled. They're with me a lot more. Some kids are public schooled. So even if mom is super disabled, they're not even with mom 8 hours a day, okay? So to assume that social services automatically removes children from disabled families is just a complete myth. It's totally not true. But it is important to be aware that there are prejudices that exist that are just simply not fair to disabled parents, because disabled parents are perfectly capable of taking care of their children. Finally, some people will straight up tell you if you're disabled, you shouldn't have had kids. And there's two things about that. Number one, for starters, disabled parents deserve to have children and families just like any other able bodied person does. Being disabled doesn't automatically mean that you don't get to experience some of the things in life. I mean, it does mean you don't get to experience some things in life other people do. But for some disabilities, children are still perfectly reasonable thing for you to do. But that being said, a lot of us became disabled after we had kids. I've received comments saying like, well, you shouldn't have had kids if you had this condition. Well, I didn't have this condition when I had kids. I didn't develop this condition until my youngest was almost a year old. So, like, it's really ignorant to say that, and you shouldn't be saying that to parents. Like, well, if you're disabled, you shouldn't have had children. You have no idea what you're talking about, okay? Just zip it. You don't know what you're talking about. So, let's move on to kind of what the reality of disabled parenting is. Parenting, in general, is exhausting. Parents are exhausted. Regardless of your situation, like, parents are exhausted. Except for maybe parents that have a nanny doing 90% of the work. But I don't know. Most parents, at least, are exhausted. Disability frequently comes with fatigue, which just adds another layer to that exhaustion. I don't have words. No, I do have words. So, the bone tired that you feel when you have a newborn and you're just not sleeping because they're not sleeping, it just extends beyond the newborn stage. It's just for the child's entire life. The bone, just in your bones, tired. It's just a bone is the only word I can think of. It's like your bones are tired. Not even necessarily that your brain's tired, just there's something not cooperating in your body all the time. But it's beyond the newborn stage. It's how you feel with your 2-year-old, your 3-year-old, your 5-year-old, your 10-year-old. There's just a level of fatigue that does not go away. And it makes parenting while disabled a whole different monster from parenting when you're able-bodied. But you can adapt. There's adaptations. There's things that disabled parents will do that might seem lazy to able-bodied parents, but the fact of the matter is that accommodation helps them parent their child and get their child into adulthood as a safe, secure, mentally stable adult. And it is what it is. For example, we've talked about me parenting from bed or parenting from the couch when I have days where like my body just wants to be horizontal. But another great example is the types of meals that are prepared. I do not cook as detailed, extravagant meals as I used to do because I don't have the energy for it. Half the time, my older 2 kids are cooking dinner because that's a reasonable skill that they need to learn. My oldest is 14, my second oldest is 12. So preparing meals is a skill that they are developing. So sometimes they'll make dinner. And then when I make dinner, it's something relatively simple, easy for me to do. I will keep ingredients on hand, so if I have just a unicorn day where I've got tons of energy, I will set aside whatever it was I was planning on making and make something awesome and take advantage of those days. I go to bed a little earlier than some people. I wake up a little later than some people. I make time for naps during the day. The kids have a quiet time every day, so I have time to rest because I need more rest than an able-bodied parent does. There are ways to adapt. Plain and simple. But it's that bone-tired feeling just extends far beyond the newborn stage when you're disabled. It's always. So please be patient. If your disabled parent friends are like, I'm sorry, I said I was going to come out today, but I can't. This isn't going to work. We need to reschedule or whatever. They're tired. They're so tired. The world is not designed for disabled people. That's what makes them disabled. Someone who's disabled, it just means the world is not designed for them. That's why someone who's autistic or ADHD is disabled. The world's not designed for them, so it's harder for them to do things that neurotypical people do in this world that's designed for them. And there's a few things about that. Like, for example, some POTSIs can't drive. They faint regularly, and they cannot drive. So getting kids to doctor's appointments can be a huge pain in the butt. It's either an additional expense because they're having to get like an Uber or something like that just to go to doctor's appointments, go to the grocery store, go whatever. or they're having to take public transportation. And anybody who has had kids on public transportation knows, holy moly. Additionally, doctor's visits are an additional hurdle because I know for me personally, I don't like making eye contact, okay? It makes me really uncomfortable. It makes my brain feel like it's itchy, and I need to recover afterwards. I'm tired and I need to recover. And so when we go to the pediatrician, it's rough for me because I know if I'm not making eye contact, it's going to send them the message, if they're neurotypical, that either I don't care, I'm just not interested in this conversation, I'm not interested in the well-being of my child, or it'll come off as just rude, that I just don't respect them. And I don't want to have a negative relationship with my child's pediatrician. So I'm forced to make eye contact, and it's extremely uncomfortable. It's something I have to recover from afterwards. And some autistics cannot force eye contact. Their inability to mask is so substantial that they can't even force eye contact. And so that can be just an additional challenge that they have to deal with, whether it's doctor's appointments, whether it's parent-teacher meetings, whether it's meeting with coaches or other parents when it comes to sports teams and such. It's just, it makes those facets of parenting even more challenging for us. And that leads kind of into the judgment. Disabled parents are judged heavily. And, if I take my kid to the doctor and I'm in a wheelchair, if I take my kid to the doctor and I'm not making eye contact, if I go to a sports game and I end up having to sit on the ground. There was a video that went viral of mine a couple years ago where I had to go to an assembly of my daughters and I had to lay down and stick my feet up in the air, and because I was going to faint. And you can look through the comments, and the amount of judgment in the comments for me doing what I had to do to show up for my child is insane. The number of people that were like, "Oh, you are just trying to get attention," or "you should have known better," which I'd homeschooled my children up until a couple months prior to that. And now I continue to homeschool my children. So I had no idea that assemblies got packed 15 minutes beforehand and that there wouldn't be seats for everybody and that I would have to stand. Like, I had no idea. But the amount of judgment in the comments, like, "You should have known better, you just want to be the center of attention, you're a poor child, you're such a burden to her." And you can see it in any of my videos talking about parenting from a disabled standpoint, either POTS in parenting, ADHD in parenting, autism in parenting. The judgment that is received is absolutely unreal. And that alone makes it harder to parent when you're disabled. No matter if you're disabled or not, you need a solid support system. And when you receive constant judgment and you're not receiving support, it makes it 10 times harder. And it affects the mental health of the parent, which then affects the mental health of the child. So if you actually care about these children that have parents that are disabled, you will be supportive. You will support that parent. You will help show up for that parent. Obviously, you won't negate your own boundaries. It's okay to have healthy boundaries and all that jazz. But when you can, you show up and you support and you help be a village, just like you would want them to be a village for you. Because that's in the best interest of the child, is for them to have a healthy, supported parent. I'm going to open up this part to please leave in the comments, if you're a disabled parent, ways that you adapt to parent while disabled, just to give examples so people see more than just my experience, because there's way more disabilities than just the ones that I have, how you parent while disabled, because there's mobility aids, there's different kinds of baby wearing gear, there are different ways to save energy, as well as just asking for help, asking your village to show up for you, having a quality village. I've shared a few of mine. Please comment some of yours, because that's extremely helpful and adding to the conversation, and we can continue this conversation in the comment section. As I mentioned before, not only do we adapt, and not only do we need support systems and all that, but we are not necessarily a burden to our children in any unique or any worse way than other parents, because we have strengths that other parents don't have. Other parents' strengths are our weaknesses, but our strengths are often other parents' weaknesses. We get to raise children that are more empathetic. Our children are learning from very young age how to step into someone else's shoes and recognize that somebody else might be struggling when you're not. Our children get to learn to be more independent earlier. We don't have a choice. We don't get to helicopter parent around our children. We have to teach our children to be independent, and we have to let them grow in that independence. And our children also have to be more resilient. They do have to deal with disappointment sometimes because we can't go do the thing that they wanted because their parent's disability is flaring up the day or something, and they have to learn how to deal with that disappointment. And that's unfortunate, but it serves them so well into adulthood when they know how to handle disappointment, when they know how to handle challenges. They just have a resilience about them that they wouldn't otherwise have. It also means our children are more inclusive, that they understand about inclusion and advocacy for people who are disabled and people that are just different. So I think that's something that's worth noting, that having a disabled parent actually comes with many benefits. As like, yeah, it comes with challenges, but it also comes with a lot of benefits for the children that are being raised by disabled parents. So disabled parents exist. We need support, not judgment. We're perfectly capable parents, and we need a village just as much as any other parent does. So please comment ways that you adapt your parenting to your disability and start some conversations there. Please share your experiences. I feel like this is just really beneficial. And if you are not a disabled parent and you have questions about it, drop those as well, and we will answer as best we can. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, and you will keep seeing these when they happen every week. We'll talk about a variety of topics. Next week, we're going to talk about masking, specifically for autism, but for any neurospiciness, masking, and what exactly it is and how it can be detrimental. And if that one's a hit, we'll deep dive into different facets of masking further down the road. But yeah, comment, and I will see you next week.